The notary is coming at 7 tonight to sign the post-nuptial agreement. That works for you, right? I looked at my husband Vincent standing in our kitchen, talking about destroying my future like he was confirming a dinner reservation. Actually, I said, I need to talk to you about that. His expression shifted, just slightly. Okay, he said carefully. I'm not signing it. Lydia, we discussed this. It's just paperwork. Standard estate planning. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder of photographs I'd taken, handed it to him. I know what it is, Vincent. I know exactly what it is. He stared at the screen, at page after page of his own documents he thought I'd never see. His face went pale. How did you find these? How did I find them? You left them in your office. How did I understand them? I've been analyzing financial structures for a decade. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize fraud when I saw it? Lydia, let me explain. No, you're going to listen. You and your mother spent 18 months systematically moving $23 million of our money into accounts I'd never see. You restructured trusts. You hid assets. You titled properties in her name. And then you drafted a post-nuptial agreement offering me $1.8 million to walk away from everything I'd helped you build. I wasn't trying to. I saved you $40 million on that European investment. I restructured your family's tax strategy and saved you $3 million every single year. And you calculated that I was worth $1.8 million to go away quietly. His hands were shaking. So here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to call your attorney. You're going to call your mother. And you're going to tell them that I know everything. I have forensic accounting reports. I have recordings of you two discussing timeline and strategy. I have evidence of wire fraud and spousal deception. And if we can't reach a settlement, I'm filing a lawsuit that will expose every illegal transaction you've made. You're bluffing, am I? Do you really want to test that, Vincent? For the first time in 5 years of marriage, I saw fear in his eyes. If you've ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they were playing a game you didn't know existed, hit that like button right now, because this story is about what happens when the woman they underestimated turns out to be the smartest person in the room. And subscribe, because you're going to want to hear how I made them pay $18 million to learn that lesson. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment I fell in love with a lie. My name is Lydia Ashford. I was 31 years old when I met Vincent Hale at a charity gala in Boston. I was a senior compliance analyst at a mid-sized investment firm. My job was finding irregularities in financial structures, spotting what didn't add up. I was good at it, very good. Vincent was 38, and he was a billionaire. I don't say that casually. His family had the kind of wealth that compounds over generations. His grandfather built a textile empire. His father diversified into real estate and early tech investments. By the time Vincent took over Hale Ventures, the portfolio was worth 9 figures. He turned it into 10. I didn't want to be at that gala. My boss had insisted. I was standing near the bar, mentally calculating how soon I could leave, when Vincent appeared beside me. You look like you're calculating escape velocity, he said. I glanced at him. Tall, dark suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Eyes that looked genuinely amused. Just considering whether the social capital gained here is worth the opportunity cost of my evening, I replied. He smiled. Actually smiled. A woman who thinks in frameworks. I'm Vincent. I know who you are. Then, you have me at a disadvantage, Lydia. And no, I don't. That was the beginning. He pursued me with focus. Flowers sent to my office with notes referencing conversations we'd had. Dinner invitations to restaurants I'd mentioned wanting to try. Questions about my work that weren't polite filler, but genuine interest. 3 months in, over dinner at a French restaurant in Back Bay, he asked me about a deal his company was considering. There's a fintech startup in Amsterdam, he said. The projections look incredible, but something feels off, and I can't pinpoint what kind of off. Just something about their compliance documentation. Can I look at it? You'd do that? I analyze financial structures for a living, Vincent. It's what I'm good at. He sent me the files that night. I spent the weekend reviewing them, and I found it, buried in subsidiary disclosures, a circular ownership structure that suggested potential money laundering frameworks. Nothing proven, but enough red flags that any regulatory review would destroy them. I called him Sunday evening. "Don't invest," I said. "You found something. I found enough that you should walk away." He pulled the $40 million investment. 3 months later, that startup collapsed under a Europol investigation. "You just saved me a fortune," Vincent said when the news broke. "You're brilliant, Lydia. Absolutely brilliant." 6 months after we met, he proposed. 8 months later, we were married. The wedding was bigger than I'd wanted. I'd hoped for something small, intimate. But Vincent's mother insisted on a full society event. Celestine Hale was 63 years old, impeccably maintained, silver hair worn in a perfect French twist, the kind of posture that made everyone around her feel slightly slouched. She'd been widowed for 7 years and ran the Hale family trust with absolute control. She was never unkind to me. That's important. She was correct, polite, but I always felt assessed rather than known, like she was calculating my value against some internal metric I couldn't see. At our engagement dinner, she'd studied me across the table. "Lydia's refreshingly practical," she'd said, "not like Vincent's previous attachments." I'd smiled, taken it as a compliment, filed away the fact that she'd chosen the word practical instead of lovely or intelligent or warm. That's something I do. I file things. I just didn't know yet how important that habit would become. The first 2 years of marriage were good. We traveled to Paris, Tokyo, the Maldives. Vincent asked about my work and actually listened. When I mentioned frustration with my firm's leadership, he didn't immediately suggest I quit. He asked what I'd change if I could. I loved him, genuinely, and I contributed to his empire. 14 months into our marriage, I identified an overlooked tax advantage in how his family structured their real estate holdings. I suggested implementing a specific type of charitable remainder trust. "That's actually brilliant," Vincent had said, taking the proposal to his attorneys. The restructuring saved the Hale family $3.2 million annually. At the next family dinner, Vincent explained the strategy. Celestine had listened carefully, then looked at me. "How resourceful," she'd said. "Not thank you. Not that's impressive. Resourceful." I filed it away. The first real warning sign came about 3 years into our marriage. I was organizing our personal financial documents for tax season. I liked to prepare early. We had multiple accounts, joint checking, savings, investment portfolios, quarterly trust distributions that Vincent received. Then I noticed a statement I didn't recognize. An account at a private wealth management firm I'd never heard of. The balance showed $4.7 million. I felt a small jolt of surprise, not alarm, not yet, just confusion. That evening, I mentioned it to Vincent. "I saw a statement from Whitmore Private Wealth today. Is that an old account?" He barely looked up from his laptop. "Oh, that's just from before we were married. I should probably consolidate it. Want me to help coordinate with their advisors?" "No need. It's mostly just sitting there. I'll handle it eventually." He'd kissed my forehead, changed the subject. I'd accepted that explanation. Why wouldn't I? But I filed it away. 2 months later, another statement arrived. Same firm. The balance had grown to $6.1 million. Accounts don't grow when they're just sitting there. I didn't mention it again. I just started paying very close attention. Here's what most people don't understand about wealth at Vincent's level. It's not about cash in a bank account. It's about structures, trusts, LLCs, holding companies, offshore vehicles, investment partnerships. Money doesn't sit still. It moves constantly between entities designed to optimize taxes, protect assets, and control distribution. I understood these structures professionally. I'd spent 10 years analyzing them, tracking money flows, identifying irregularities. So when I started noticing irregularities in Vincent's empire, I knew exactly what I was seeing. Over several months, I saw documents left on his desk. Usually Vincent was meticulous about putting away sensitive materials, but I'd glimpsed trust amendment drafts with highlighted sections, correspondence from a law firm I didn't recognize, a memo referencing estate restructuring and revised beneficial ownership, a wire transfer authorization for $8 million to something called Crescent Holdings, LLC. None of these meant anything individually. Together, they formed a pattern. Someone was restructuring Vincent's assets. Significantly, the question was restructuring them. How? And why wasn't I seeing any documentation? I found my answer on a Tuesday afternoon. Vincent was traveling. Singapore. A 10-day conference. Celestine had called that morning. "Lydia, darling," she'd said warmly. "Vincent mentioned you're free Thursday. Why don't we have lunch? I so rarely get time with you alone." I'd agreed, while mentally noting that Celestine had never sought time alone with me before. After the call, I went into Vincent's home office. I was looking for a warranty document for our dishwasher. He'd filed it somewhere in his cabinet system. I found the warranty in the third drawer. Underneath it was a leather portfolio I didn't recognize. I should have closed it, respected his privacy. But one of the documents inside had a label I could see through the transparent sleeve. Lydia, post-nuptial considerations. My name, on a legal document I'd never seen. I opened the portfolio. Inside were 53 pages detailing the systematic dismantling of any claim I might have to Vincent's wealth. Let me be specific, because specificity matters. When Vincent and I married, we'd signed a prenuptial agreement. I'd read it carefully, had my own attorney review it. It was fair. Assets acquired before marriage remained separate. Assets acquired during marriage would be split according to contribution and state law. What I was looking at now was different. These documents, drafted over the past 18 months, showed 5 distinct strategies. First, trust restructuring. The Hale family trust that Vincent was primary beneficiary of had been amended. New sub-trusts created with specific beneficial ownership. Celestine was now trustee with full discretionary control. The $4 million quarterly distributions Vincent received could now be redirected at her discretion. Second, company ownership transfers. Vincent owned outright 3 companies worth a combined estimated value of $180 million. Over the past year, ownership had been transferred to Crescent Holdings LLC. I found the operating agreement. Vincent owned 45%. Celestine owned 55%. In the event of divorce, Vincent's shares would transfer to Celestine. Third, real estate transfers. Our penthouse, the home I'd helped design, where I'd lived for 4 years. The deed was titled in Celestine's name. It had apparently always been this way. Purchased with family trust funds. Vincent had never mentioned this. 2 vacation properties I'd believed we owned jointly were also titled through family entities that excluded me. Fourth, offshore accounts. That mysterious account that had grown from $4.7 million to $6.1 million was one of 7 accounts at the same private wealth firm. Combined balance, $43 million, all structured as separate property trusts established with premarital funds. Except I found wire transfer records showing at least $18 million had been moved into these accounts during our marriage, and then recharacterized through transactions designed to make them appear premarital. Fifth, the postnuptial agreement. There was a draft that would supersede our prenup. In exchange for a one-time payment of $1.8 million, I would waive any claim to marital property division, spousal support, any interest in Hale family businesses or trusts, and any claim related to intellectual contributions to family wealth. Intellectual contributions to family wealth. They knew I'd saved Vincent $40 million. They knew I'd restructured their tax strategy. They knew I'd contributed to growing their empire, and they'd calculated exactly how to ensure I'd never see a dollar of it. At the bottom of the draft postnuptial was a note in Vincent's handwriting. Mother, thoughts, timeline, and in different ink, Celestine's reply. After the Singapore trip, she'll be amenable. She always is, amenable. She'd assessed me correctly after all. I sat in that office for 20 minutes holding those documents. I felt something I can't fully describe. Rage, yes. Betrayal, absolutely. But also something colder, clearer, certainty. I'd spent 5 years loving a man who'd been playing a long game I hadn't known existed, and his mother had been the architect. I thought about confronting him, calling him in Singapore, screaming, but I'd spent 10 years reading case files. I'd watched what happened to people who confronted before they were prepared. They lost. I took photographs of every page with my phone, put the portfolio back exactly where I'd found it, walked out of that office, made myself tea, sat down to think. I had 9 days before Vincent returned, 9 days to build my counterattack. The next morning I called in sick to work. Then I drove 2 hours to Providence. I'd researched carefully, found an attorney with no Boston connections, no ties to Vincent's circles. Patricia Brennan was 60 years old, sharp eyes, gray hair, the kind of stillness that suggested she'd seen everything twice. I brought my phone, showed her every photograph. She reviewed them in silence, then looked at me. Do you understand what you're showing me? Financial fraud, asset concealment, illegal trust, restructuring. Yes. And do you understand what it means to prove this? Years of litigation, millions in legal fees, and a husband who'll claim I'm a gold digger trying to steal his family's money. Patricia's mouth twitched, almost a smile. You're realistic. Good. Most people in your position lead with emotion. I'm furious, I said evenly. But fury doesn't win cases. Strategy does. What do you want? I'd thought about this all night. I want them to understand they miscalculated, and I want what I'm actually entitled to, not their family fortune. Compensation for what I contributed and what our marriage legally entitles me to. Patricia nodded slowly. Then we don't litigate. We build leverage and negotiate. But Lydia, that means playing a role until we're ready. Can you pretend you don't know? Can I pretend I don't know my husband and his mother spent 18 months systematically defrauding me while planning to manipulate me into signing away my rights? Yes, I thought about Celestine's note. She'll be amenable. She always is. Yes, I said. I can do that. Patricia and I built a 3-phase strategy. Phase 1, documentation. I needed more than photographs. I needed originals, expert analysis, independent verification. Patricia connected me with Marcus Webb, a forensic accountant who specialized in tracing hidden assets. I gave him everything I had. He called me 3 days later. I found more than you expected, didn't I? He said. Tell me, those offshore accounts are part of a larger structure spanning 3 countries. The trust restructuring was done through a firm that specializes in asset protection, which is sometimes legitimate and sometimes a euphemism for hiding money from spouses. Whoever planned this knew exactly what they were doing. His mother runs the family trust. Then she's smart, but she made mistakes. These wire transfers, some are clearly marital funds being laundered through pre-marital accounts. The timing, the amounts, the source accounts, it's provable. How provable? Court holds up. Criminal charges possible provable. If you wanted to push it that far, I filed that information away. Phase 2, protection. I needed to secure my own position. Patricia helped me quietly open accounts Vincent didn't know about. I moved my salary into them. I documented every contribution I'd made to Vincent's business. Emails where I'd provided analysis, notes from conversations, recordings from family dinners where they'd acknowledged my help. Patricia also suggested something that felt both paranoid and necessary. Start recording conversations, she said. Our state was one-party consent. As long as I was part of the conversation, I could legally record it. So I did. Phase 3, counterintelligence. I needed to know their exact timeline and plan. This was the hardest part. It meant being the woman they expected me to be. Loving, trusting, amenable. When Vincent returned from Singapore, I met him at the door, smiled, kissed him. I missed you, he said. I wondered if he knew he was lying, or if he'd convinced himself it was true. I missed you too, I replied. Felt nothing. He'd brought me a gift, a jade bracelet that probably cost more than most people earned in 6 months. It's beautiful, I said. Let me record this moment. 2 days later, Celestine called. Lydia, darling. Lunch Thursday, just us girls. I'd love that. We met at her club. She was warm in the way ice can seem warm if you've only known cold. She asked about my work, my plans. Then, delicately, she said, Lydia, I wanted to talk to you about something sensitive. Vincent and I have been working with our estate attorneys on some updates. You know how these things are. Tax laws change. Structures need refreshing. Of course, I said, sipped my wine. Let my phone record every word from my purse. Part of that involves updating postnuptial agreements for family members. Just a formality, really, but it protects everyone. I wanted you to hear it from me first, so it doesn't feel like an ambush when Vincent mentions it. She smiled with perfect concern. I appreciate that, I said. Is there anything I should be concerned about? Oh, not at all. You know we adore you. This is just about clarity, making sure if, God forbid, anything ever happened, everyone is protected, and there are no ugly legal tangles. You understand, don't you? With your background, you probably see the wisdom in it, using my own expertise to manipulate me. Elegant. That makes sense, I said. I'd want to have my attorney review anything, of course. Just a flicker of something cold in her eyes. Then smooth again. Of course, though these are fairly standard. The family has used the same firm for 40 years. I'm sure they're excellent. But you'd want me to be smart about this. Wouldn't you, Celestine? You've always appreciated that I'm practical. I used her own word, watched her process it. I would, she said slowly. I'm glad Vincent found someone with sense. We finished lunch. As we left, she touched my arm. You're good for him, Lydia. For the family, I hope you know that. I smiled. I'm glad you think so. In my purse, my phone had recorded everything. If this is making you angry, good. Leave a comment telling me what you would have done in my position. Because what happened next, they never saw it coming. Marcus delivered his forensic report on day 9 of Vincent's return. 37 pages documenting $23.4 million in marital funds illegally moved to separate accounts. Trust restructuring that violated fiduciary duty disclosure requirements. A pattern of asset transfers designed to defraud a spouse. This is criminal, Marcus said bluntly. If a prosecutor saw this, someone could go to jail. But would a prosecutor take it? Depends on jurisdiction and whether there's political will to go after a wealthy family. But the civil case, airtight. Patricia and I finalized our counter-demand. We asked for $15 million immediate settlement, full disclosure of all assets, withdrawal of the proposed postnuptial, non-retaliation agreement. In exchange, I wouldn't pursue criminal charges or public disclosure. It's less than you're entitled to, Patricia said. But it's more than they think you know you're entitled to, and it's backed by evidence that terrifies them. When do we send it? The day before their deadline, maximum pressure. Day 13 arrived. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Vincent came in, already dressed for work. So tonight, we should sign the postnuptial, he said, as casual as discussing dinner plans. I have the notary coming at 7. That works for you, right? And that's when I had the conversation you heard at the beginning of this story. Actually, I need to talk to you about that. His face when I showed him those photographs. When I listed every illegal transaction, when I told him I had recordings and forensic reports and evidence of wire fraud, pure fear. He tried charm first. Lydia, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. Then anger. You went through my private documents? You mean the documents detailing how you were stealing from me? Yes, Vincent. I did. Then, desperation. What do you want? I handed him the settlement demand. Read it. Then call your attorney and your mother. Tell them I know everything. Tell them if we can't reach an agreement, I'm filing a lawsuit that exposes every illegal transaction. Do you understand what that means? Discovery, depositions, press coverage, billionaire family's fraud scheme exposed by insider wife. That's a headline. You wouldn't. Try me. I left him standing there, holding the papers. Finally understanding he'd miscalculated. An hour later, Celestine called. I let it go to voicemail. Lydia, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Let's meet and discuss this reasonably. I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone. I texted back. Talk to my attorney. Her contact information is on the settlement demand. Then I blocked her number. The negotiation took 3 weeks. Vincent's attorneys tried everything. They claimed the documents were preliminary drafts. They argued trust restructuring was normal estate planning. They suggested I was being vindictive. Patricia shut down every argument with evidence. Dates, wire transfers, recorded conversations. When they threatened litigation, she reminded them about the fraud exposure. We're happy to litigate, she said. Discovery will be fascinating. And I'm sure the press will find it interesting too. Celestine tried to reach me directly, twice. Once at my office, once at a restaurant where she happened to be dining. Both times I walked away without speaking. I'd spent 5 years being amenable. I was done. We settled on day 21. Final terms. $18 million. Immediate payment. More than our initial demand because they'd wasted time. Full asset disclosure under penalty of perjury. Withdrawal of their postnuptial, non-disparagement agreement that went both ways. Uncontested divorce with no spousal support claims from either party. In exchange, I wouldn't pursue criminal charges, wouldn't speak publicly about the asset concealment, would sign away claims to Hale family assets that predated our marriage. It was fair, more than fair. It was acknowledgement. The day we signed, I saw Vincent briefly in the attorney's office. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Was any of it real? He asked quietly. I thought about the man I'd met at that gala, the proposals and flowers, and conversations that had felt like connection. I don't know, I said honestly. Was it? He didn't answer. Celestine, I never saw again. She didn't come to the signing. Sent her attorney instead. I heard later through mutual acquaintances that she'd told people I turned out to be a gold digger after all. You never really know people, she'd said. I didn't contradict it. Let her think what she wanted. I knew the truth. 6 months later, I was living in a penthouse I actually owned in a different city, working as an independent consultant for firms that needed someone who understood how to spot financial irregularities. Turns out, there's a market for a woman who can find what people try to hide. I donated some of the settlement money, invested the rest carefully, built a life that belonged entirely to me. Sometimes I thought about Vincent, about whether he'd known from the beginning or whether Celestine had led him into it gradually, whether he'd ever loved me or whether I'd just been a useful asset until I wasn't. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I'd seen the trap and walked out of it, that I'd turned their own strategy against them, that when they asked what was I going to do about it, I had an answer they never saw coming. People ask me sometimes if I regret the marriage, if I wish I'd seen the warning signs sooner. I tell them no. I learned something valuable. I learned exactly how strong I am when I stop being amenable, when I stop being practical in the way people expect, when I use the same skills that made me useful to build my own protection. They thought being smart meant I'd understand their logic, sign their papers, accept their valuation of my worth. They were half right. Being smart meant I understood exactly what they were doing. It just also meant I knew how to dismantle it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight for what you deserved, or if you just love seeing people get exactly what they earned, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me what would you have done in Lydia's position. Would you have confronted immediately or played the long game? And if someone you know needs to hear this story, someone who's been underestimated or told they're being too sensitive or should just accept what they're offered, share this video with them. Sometimes people need to be reminded that being kind doesn't mean being weak, that being loving doesn't mean being naive, that being practical doesn't mean being a pushover. They asked what I was going to do about it. I showed them, and that lesson cost them $18 million. But what I learned about myself, that's worth more than any settlement.